Everything's felt different since I got back, and I've had some trouble remembering things and collecting my thoughts, so I'm going to start keeping this digital journal to hopefully help with all that. A couple of weeks ago, I fell at work and woke up in the hospital. I had been up on a ladder when I lost my balance doing something stupid, and before I knew it, the back of my head was smacking the ground. On the way to the hospital, I suffered a stroke. They kept me for almost a week, monitoring me and running tests. I had suffered some minor brain damage, but compared to what it could have been, I was extremely lucky. I wouldn't consider any amount of brain damage lucky, but the doctors assured me I could make a full recovery given time. I've been back home in my apartment for a few days now, and things have felt off. I was told to expect some mental fog and headaches, and I was experiencing those. But this was different. I felt confused and kept seeing movement out of the corners of my eyes. I wish I could say I had someone to tell about this, but I really don't. I never kept in close touch with my friends after school ended, and they never really reached out either. Sometimes I wonder if we would have all still been friends if not for my pride, or more accurately, my fear that we weren't really all that close. But it seems in hindsight that the fear that kept me from reaching out in the first place to try ended up isolating me anyways. Funny enough, we all still have each other added on Facebook, and I watched through the digital glass as most of them met up for a recent wedding. I guess I missed the invite, and I haven't exactly been putting myself out there as far as making new connections. I think somewhere along the way I became comfortable in solitude. I don't have any siblings or cousins. I was the sole child of our aging family tree, and now I'm the sole remainder of our family altogether. Grim, I know, but it's the truth and necessary to explain why I'm sharing my thoughts here. Or maybe it's self-indulgent, woe is me and all that. But today when I woke up, something was different. As I emerged from my bedroom, I spotted a red door with a brass knob sticking out from behind my couch. And no, I don't mean propped against the wall. I mean screwed into a frame that never existed. I pulled my couch aside and tried for the knob, only to find it locked. I tried knocking fruitlessly before stepping back and examining the wall around it. There was no way someone could have just installed this while I was sleeping. I decided I was going to take the damn thing off its hinges. One way or another, I was going to find out what was inside, and hopefully prove I hadn't just lost my mind. I mean, this isn't exactly what I would call a hallucination. I could run my fingers across its surface and feel the imperfections of the paint. I felt the cold brass of the knob and the clicking of its internal lock. It was here. It was real. I just needed some tools. I just need to drive down to the store and get a screwdriver set, and I could pop it right out of the wall. On my way out, I noticed a small stack of bills and mail by the door. I have to remember to check on those later. They look important. When I returned from the store, I headed straight for the red door, and that's when I spotted it. On my coffee table sat a brand new screwdriver set, the exact same set that I had just purchased. In front of the red door was a single curved scrape along the floor that outlined the inward swinging of its path. It had opened while I was gone, and even possibly left me a screwdriver set. This all sounds crazy, and I don't have any real explanation for what's going on, but maybe I can get one. I got to work on the hinges, and one by one I freed the screws from their frame. Finally, I took off the doorknob and pulled away the door. I held my breath as I peered behind it. There was nothing. Well, not like an empty nothing, more like a wall, only a quarter-inch from the door frame. It was covered in wallpaper, a different one than the rest of my apartment, and it looked a fair bit more worn. It had an ornate floral pattern that blended seamlessly into looping textures. The paper had yellowed with time but still held faded colors. It looked familiar, but I couldn't place where I had seen it before, nor could I confirm I actually had seen it before. I felt relieved that nothing was on the other side, but then why did it open when I was gone? I spent an embarrassing amount of time trying to find a way to open the wall on the other side. I became convinced it was a false wall or had some sort of trapdoor mechanism, but I found no such thing. I debated just trying to smash my way through, but I was afraid that I might end up busting into someone else's apartment. I plan on returning the screwdriver set to the store tomorrow, seeing as I have 2 of them now. Hopefully now I can put this whole door thing to bed and feel like a normal person again. Today I couldn't find my car. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remember where I parked it, even after searching the whole parking complex. I ended up scouring the streets nearby to no luck. I must have looked for hours before I gave up. Unsure where else to look, I figured it must have been stolen, so I got on a payphone to make a report, only to find out there was already a pending investigation because the car was reported missing 3 days ago, but that couldn't be possible. I had just found the car missing today. Feeling confused, I rushed back home to check my calendar and instead found the red door securely back in its frame. I felt a rising frustration at my situation, the confusion only adding to my agitation. I unscrewed the door again, and this time carried it all the way downstairs to the apartment dumpster. Slamming it inside with a barely contained anger, I stomped back to my apartment to sulk, feeling overwhelmed. As I sat down, I looked over the screwdriver set again, trying to make sense of what was happening. I pulled the receipt from the crumpled bag and looked it over. The purchase date was marked for almost a week ago. I bought it yesterday. I know I did. What the fuck is happening to me? Last night I woke up to the sound of knocking at 2 a.m. I stumbled out of bed and started dressing, wondering who could be here at this hour. But as I opened my bedroom door out to the hall, I stopped in my tracks. Directly across the hall from my bedroom was the red door. This time with the addition of a brass mail slot 3 feet up the door. Through the cracks of the mail slot poured light, a glow that made me squint with pained eyes. From behind the door came faint sounds, and I leaned in, straining to hear. Wind chimes and birds and the sound of branches rustling in a calm breeze. But just before my ear met the door's surface, the knock sounded again. The same knock my grandfather did every time he visited my childhood home when he was still alive. Shave and a haircut. And just like my grandfather, it never finished the rhythm, instead waiting for a knockback. "Grandpa?" I whispered out toward the door. Again it repeated its half of the knock. Shave and a haircut. Cautiously I reached out to knock back. 2 bits. I completed the knock and held my breath, but nothing happened. And after a moment I reached out for the knob, unsure what else to do. To my surprise it clicked, and I pulled the door open. On the other side was a screen door between me and a flood of sunlight. Somehow through the doorway was the front porch of my childhood home, and beyond it the well-kept lawn and our tall oak tree adorned with a thick roped tire swing. The cool morning breeze met my face, the sound of chirping birds and wind chimes now in full. This was impossible. I was 6 floors up. There was another apartment on the other side of this wall. None of this could be real, and yet the sun felt warm on my skin through the screen. The breeze was cool, and the air smelt of fresh grass and sidewalks wet with morning dew. It was exactly how I remembered it, and it only made it more terrifying. The street, the neighboring houses, the trees, and well-kept lawns and classic cars and driveways. It was all in there, but I couldn't step through. Afraid the world itself was coming undone, I shut the door, and the light that had been visible through the cracks before disappeared as the knob clicked in place. This time I need help. I have to be sure this is real. First thing in the morning, I'll call the property manager and ask for maintenance to come check out this door. In the meantime, I'm going on a walk to clear my head. On my way out, I noticed a small stack of bills and mail by the door. I have to remember to check on those later, they look important. The maintenance worker came by today, but the door was gone. As to not appear crazy, I claimed I heard weird sounds in the wall the other night, like knocking and chimes. While the guy was taking a look around, I offered to get him some water, but when I went to the fridge, I found it slightly ajar. A foul odor wafted from within. My food had spoiled, and the fridge was entirely warm, something I surely would have noticed. The food couldn't have gone bad so quickly. Even if the fridge wasn't working, this looked like a week's worth of decay. A pattern I've continued to notice is a loss or manipulation of time. The door, whatever it really is, maybe warps time around it. I can't remember the last time I shaved, yet my face barely has stubble. Am I even aging? I can hardly focus. Could this really all be real? Am I experiencing some sort of anomaly? Did I ever leave the hospital in the first place? How long have I been home? How long have I been on leave from work? I asked myself question after question until I broke down crying and frustrated and scared. I just want to feel lucid again. Another sleepless night. Last night the door woke me up again, or maybe it was a dream, I can't even be sure. It was right above my bed, already hanging open. Through the door, extending straight upward, was a familiar dim hallway. It was my grandparents' house, their own hall stretching up impossibly into the sky. At the end of the hall, I could see the hue-shifting glow of a TV. The muffled sounds of a sitcom drifted down the hall. Intermittently, I could hear their laughter, a warm, familiar sound. As my eyes adjusted to the dark, I got up from my bed to rummage around for a stool. But when I returned, the door was being pulled shut from within by something, an even, smooth pull, followed by the clicking of a lock. Instead of returning to bed, I got to work with my tools, and once again pulled the door off its hinges. It fell to my bed with a thud that I worried might wake the neighbors. But I soon forgot, seeing the place beyond the door had changed. On the other side was a white louvered closet door, its slats letting in morning sunlight despite the real time. Between the slats I recognized the room. My childhood bedroom sat beyond the closet door on my ceiling. But beyond the slats everything was rotated parallel with the door frame, as if gravity kept different rules just beyond the threshold. This time I had to be sure. I reached up and pulled the closet door open before climbing inside, and as my feet left the stool, I felt my weight suddenly lurch horizontally and nearly fell backwards into my apartment. For a moment I struggled on all fours to orient myself as I looked back at the closet door, seeing my bed straight ahead appearing as if it had been stood up against the wall. The stool looked like it had been placed directly into a wall. I forced myself to look away as dizziness swept over me. I was here, like my entire childhood bedroom had been placed in a time capsule. I was practically standing in a memory. I dug through my old toy chest, clutching a plastic body in my hand. It was real. It was all real. I could smell breakfast being prepared, the aroma of bacon causing me to salivate. As I stepped toward the blinds-covered window, I heard the sound of heavy footsteps coming from beyond my bedroom door. As it got closer down the hall, I recognized the sound as my father's work shoes. Realizing they were nearing my door, I reached for the knob only to find it locked. "Hello?" I called out hesitantly. The footsteps stopped just behind the door, the shadow of two shoes casting beneath the crack, but no response. "Please, is someone there? I don't understand where I am." "Who's out there?" I tried one final time, and my father's voice replied, "Your mom wanted me to remind you you're grounded before I leave for work, but instead I'll just remind you to take out the trash before I get home. I guess it's my fault you're a disobedient fuck-up. My fear of becoming my own father poisoned my efforts in raising you. But I couldn't trust myself. If I could hurt the people I love the most, even as a punishment, what would that make me?" I felt a turning in my stomach as he talked at me, words my father had never spoken, but about things that sowed doubt into my image of the man he was. Things that I almost feared were true. Instead, I ignored anything that upset me, unwilling to react in fear of blowing up. And your mother, your poor mother, left to be the bad cop, the jury, and the judge. You resented her, and she resented me in turn. As it was like many things, all my fault.
Dad?
My voice cracked as I spoke. "Before I leave for work, your mother and I will kiss with the same transactional formality of a public bus, making its route. In the parking lot, I'll take off my wedding ring before entering the office and hitting on the receptionist that I drunkenly kissed at last year's Christmas party. I still remember the feeling of her clumsy fingers running over my zipper as our lips met, only pulling away after seeing your judging face staring up at me from my desk. Now I place the photo face down instinctually when she comes by my office. How monstrous is that?" He finishes nearly emotionless. Stunned at their words, and unsure if any of that could be true, I took a step away from the bedroom door. I watch the shadow beneath the door intently, frozen in place. Suddenly, the violent banging and rattling of the door breaks me from my fear, and I dart back toward the closet. The banging becomes louder and louder, the door practically jumping in its frame with each blow. The frame and hinges begin to give way just as I cross the threshold back into my apartment. But as I tumble out, again my weight and inertia shift so suddenly, I find myself twisting through the air. I fell for a half second in terror before I felt myself smack against the bed frame and everything went dark. When I woke, I found dried blood on the side of my head, the skin having broken when colliding with the wooden edge of my bed frame. My head pounded. My thoughts swam in a sea of pain as I got up and inspected my bedroom. The red door was gone from the ceiling, but the stool and tools still sat out. At least I know it really happened. Or at least that I believe it did. But I can't, there's no explanation that makes sense. I need to bring something back from behind the door, something that can prove these places physically appear. Tangible, holdable evidence. I just needed some things, and I could prepare this time. So I got dressed, left my apartment, and began packing a bag. Preserved foods, flashlight, rope, knife, first aid. Anything I could think of, I loaded into my cart. But my card declined, and then my other card declined, and then my credit card declined too. But my situation was desperate, and you'd be surprised how much merchandise you can cram inside a backpack in a pinch. I promise I'll pay them back when it's all over, if that means anything. The long walk back to my apartment gave me time to think about the situation, and I figured that if the red door hadn't shown up when other people were around, then maybe it was time to get a roommate, or at least move somewhere else, if I could even figure out what was wrong with my bank. I even considered selling items from behind the red door if I could physically bring them back with me. As ridiculous as that sounds, I don't know what I can do here, or what I even should do. I don't know why the red door appeared, or why it keeps showing me these places from my past, but I can't help but feel like I'm in danger. Or maybe I've been in danger for a long time and I only just realized it. I keep waking up in the night, afraid I'm going to be facing the door, afraid something's going to crawl out of it. It only started showing up in real life after my head injury, but before that I faintly remember dreams with a similar door. But nothing significant beyond a faint recognition. Everywhere I looked for answers came up empty. And as I came to this conclusion and reached my apartment floor, I spotted the red door again, directly where my apartment door once stood, its brass fixtures shining with the overhead light. The red door was my only path forward. With nowhere left to go, I prepared my items in the hall, discarding their plastic and cardboard on the ground. The door was unlocked, and beyond it was the family bathroom from my childhood home. Its white tiles bathed in a square of moonlight from the lone window above, casting a partial spotlight over the bathroom mat. I found myself climbing out of where the shower door would have been. Stepping out, my rubber-soled shoe squeaked against the clean tile. I froze and listened, only stepping through once I was sure nothing had stirred. I reached for the bathroom door, and it clicked open. I felt my heart begin to race as I pushed into the hallway, the moonlight trailing behind me. I crept down the hall toward the living room, the layout burned into memory, and as I rounded the corner I froze. A dark silhouette sat on the corner armchair unmoving. I felt immense dread as I realized my flashlight was inside the backpack, and I slowly moved to unsling the bag. I froze as her voice cut through the air. My mother. I know it's you. There's no use in pretending. You snuck out, didn't you? And now you have to make me the bad guy again for being concerned for your safety. And your father will say I'm being too hard on you, that young boys will sneak out. That's what they do. Bullshit. You never respected me, and you defy me again and again. No matter how lenient I try to be, you always find another line to cross. You know I never wanted children, but your father did. Oh, your father. He who always gets his way in the end, doesn't he? I get to swell up with his child, lose control of my autonomy and my emotions. I get irreversible damage to my body, and for what? For you? I remember this night. I had snuck out to hang out with a girl I liked. and my mom caught me trying to sneak back into bed, and she did chew me out for it, but nothing like this. She never spoke like this, not to me, not to anyone. And this shadow of her sat impossibly rigid, unexpressive as she spoke, her tone even. We had broken up, until I found out I was pregnant with you, and well, I told him. And that was my biggest mistake, because there was no going back. He didn't want me to kill his child. He begged me to consider raising a family, and threatened to tell my parents if I thought of getting rid of it. Of you. And then, the person I was, my aspiration, my goals, my career. I lost everything, changed everything, because your father wanted it so, and because he made sure I didn't have a choice, and no amount of time in a happy marriage or with a swaddled baby in my arms could undo that betrayal. And what scars does he have to show for it? A wife who's become a roommate, a drunken, medicated roommate. How easy for him. I just hope he doesn't get that poor girl from his office pregnant. The venom of her words made me nauseous. I struggled to catch my breath as I fumbled for my flashlight, unable to bear the darkness of the room any longer. Flicking it on, her shadowed form vanishes, leaving an empty armchair where she once sat. The light begins to flicker, and in the brief moments of shadow, I swear I can see her again, slowly rising from her seat. Just her outline, like the cast shadow of her person, a void in the shape of my mother. My light completely dies, and she is standing before me, poised and rigid, arms at her sides, jaw unmoving despite the speech. And how do you repay me? By turning on me. You came from me, from inside my body, and you say you hate me. With his eyes. After everything I've given, my body, my life, it's never enough. Well, maybe I despise you. Maybe I was terrified to admit that you were the living embodiment of my ruined life and that I couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand you. I felt hot tears welling in my eyes. Mom, please. I'm sorry. If this is real, I'm sorry. A crushing silence enveloped me as I sniffled back tears, and for a brief moment we stood in the darkness facing one another. Her tone softening, she whispered, I should be sorry too, before my light came back on and she was gone. I looked around the room, remembering my plan. I pulled a quilted blanket off the corner armchair and tucked it into my bag. It smelt like her perfume. Her words played over and over in my mind, then my father's. Is this really what was going on? Had they really kept it in till their deathbeds? The more I considered it, the more overwhelmed I felt. But I had to keep moving. Every other door I came across was locked, and unwilling to try and pry them open after everything I just endured, I moved for the exit. The door was closed, even though I had wedged it open when I came through. I tried for the knob and found it locked. A rising terror overtook me, the thought of being stuck in that place nearly sending me into a panic. Shakily, I produced my tools and began working on the door, constantly checking over my shoulder and jumping at every noise as I worked from the bathroom floor. Finally, I pulled the door away from its frame, and my breath caught in my throat. A second door just behind it, a half-foot of space between them. Frantically now, I knelt down again, working the screwdriver on the doorknob and hinges. From my childhood living room, I heard the sound of our clock begin to chime, over and over. I removed the second door to find a third. With rising frustration and panic, I roughly tossed the doors into the hall to make space before getting to work on the third, when the sound of a loud crash causes me to stop and listen. The chiming of the clock stops as I hear the bang and shattering echo through the house. I redouble my efforts as more crashes begin to sound, a few pieces clattering down the hallway as the destruction continues. The third door comes off, and as I turn to push it out of my way, a heavy thudding comes down the hall. It stops just before the bathroom doorway, but I can hear one of the discarded wooden doors creaking under its weight. Son, the voices of both my mother and father overlap. Don't leave. I try to speak, but nothing comes out, fear holding me hostage. I love you, its voices overlap. You're not them, I manage to say. The wood creaks as if it shifts its weight, a heavy silence hanging over. Stay, it hisses. I glance over my shoulder, seeing my apartment through the doorway. No more doors blocking my path. I wonder for a moment if this thing will try and stop me, or if I could even resist. I dart for the exit without a word, and I hear the sound of heavy snapping wood behind me and the resulting shower of splinters striking the tiled bathroom. As I tumble out into my apartment, I pull myself over my couch and whip around to see the doorway. From within the darkness, I start to hear whistling, a familiar tune unmistakable from any other in my mind. One my father used to whistle to me as a kid, one he used to calm me down as a baby. His own version, misremembered and out of tune, came out of the doorway as if plucked directly from my memory. And slowly in the darkness I watched as the shadow of an arm reached across the doorway and pulled my apartment door shut from within, as if it had never changed. I stared blankly at my front door, unsure if the apartment really still lay behind it, or if I really ever escaped the red door in the first place. For all I know, I could be in a perfect copy of my own home, and how would I even tell? I doubt I'll get any sleep after this. I don't know how much more of this I can take. I don't know what the fuck that thing in there is, but it clearly knows me. I'll try and update if something happens. For now, I just need to rest. I noticed a small stack of bills and mail by the door. I have to remember to check on those later. They look important. I must have fallen asleep at some point. When I woke up, I was on my couch, flashlight still on in my hand, and my knife clutched in the other. The first thing I noticed was I still had my shoes on, and secondly, I noticed a sweltering heat in the apartment. I found my oven on at 450 degrees, with no way of telling how long it had been on. I just considered myself lucky that no fire had started. I treated myself to a cold shower and aired out the house while I considered what to do next. I already tried leaving the apartment, and I've become convinced I'm not trapped inside, so at least I have that. I've been keeping the TV on at all times to help fill the silence, and I think the background noise helps distract me, at least until reality comes knocking. A maintenance worker came by and asked me if I was experiencing any leaks. I said no, but he asked to come in and look around. I glanced back into my apartment, furniture rearranged in defensive positions, items strewn about, makeshift weapons sitting on my coffee table, the markings of a crazy person. So I let him in, and he pretended to ignore the state of my apartment as we headed toward the bathroom, which I had been too afraid to approach for days. But, unfortunately, as we neared the door, I recognized the sound of a running shower head that I didn't remember leaving on. Before we even opened the door, his boots squished against the wet carpet of my hallway, and he rushed to get inside. The shower head was on inside, and crumbled against the drain was the clothing I wore through the red door yesterday. Or at least I thought it was yesterday, but I swore I had been too afraid to enter it. As the man began frantically trying to fix it, I became overwhelmed with the urge to flee. Like I was a child being caught doing something wrong, I grabbed my backpack and fled the apartment. I was so confused, I don't understand how any of that could have happened. I don't remember doing any of that. I can't remember taking a shower or turning on the oven. I can't even remember the last thing I ate. But as I neared the elevator, all I found was the red door, and I tried the stairwell, but there was only the red door. The exits, the rooms, everything, it was all red doors. And sooner or later I had to go through one. I decided my best bet was the stairwell and tried the handle. It turned, and as I pulled the door open, I saw inside. It was my grandfather's garage, his classic car parked inside. A single light fixture overhead illuminated the cluttered space, his stacked assortment of objects and memorabilia casting shadows along the walls that played tricks on my mind. Slowly I inspected the room, the details perfect in the light. The smell of cigar smoke and motor oil hung in the air, and beyond the garage door I could hear the sounds of small fireworks. I stepped toward the garage door, the tall windows flashing with light as distant fireworks boomed in the sky. Smoke, barbecue, sunscreen. It smelled like the 4th of July at my grandparents' house. I could hear delighted voices and cheery, tipsy chatter from outside the garage, the family likely all lined up on the sidewalk to watch the show. I heard the harsh whistling of a piccolo Pete, and the flashing stutter of showers of multicolored sparks, the light of which danced across the dusty garage glass, but the view was obscured by the garage light. Feeling nostalgic, I reached up and pulled the cord, bathing the garage in darkness, and finally I could see the fireworks beyond the glass. The mortars illuminating the night with spectacular blasts, the waving of sparklers, the cheering of children. I couldn't quite see it all, but I could picture it behind the door, and I felt warm in the memory. From the corner of the garage, I heard a lone voice call out to me. I remember you were afraid of the poppets, scared they'd blow pieces right off your hand, until I popped one between my fingers, and the way you looked at me, I might as well have been a superhero. My grandfather's voice carried from the dark, a lone orange-embered cigar marked his location among the boxes. Grandpa, your dad was always so protective over you when it came to me. I guess he always assumed I'd beat you if you misbehaved. But that beast had long been tamed by the time you came around. Sometimes I looked at your smiling face and felt guilt at why I hadn't seen the same in my son. Why I saw a man to be molded instead of a boy to be cherished, I can't say. You were too young to remember, but one time I was too rough with you when I was drunk. I picked you up by your arm, wrenching it in the process. And when I heard your little cries, saw your face, it clicked for me. A haze of smoke drifted through the garage as he paused. I never hated my son. I wanted him to be strong, but I was a weak man. I carried a darkness with me from my youth, and I fear I only passed it on to him. Only my old man treated me worse, and I did much worse things for it. I hurt a nice girl in a bad way, and I never got caught for it. I went on to live a normal life, even when ruining others. I like to think that I've suffered and paid for it, but I think I'm going to hell. Is that what this place is? I managed. How about me and you go get some ice cream, bud? I'll even let you hold the wheel. Can I stay here a little longer? I asked, unsure if it would even respond to me. Sure, buddy, enjoy the fireworks. His smoke carried his words, but the ember disappeared. So I sat for a while and watched the fireworks through the garage door and listened to the sounds of a happy family. And at some point I heard the sound of the car door opening, and without protest I climbed inside, expecting to die. I fell asleep in the back seat and woke up to the lurching of the car. I peeked my eyes open, scanning the inside of the car. It was my parents' old SUV now, and I was in the back seat. It was dark out, the car itself pitch black. But beyond the windows I could see the street stretching into the distance, illuminated by light posts. In the front seat sat the outline of my father and mother, rigid like mannequins, untouched by light. I watched them for a time, but the lull of the car made my eyes heavy. I heard them begin to speak, their voices intertwining. Is he asleep? Yeah, he had a big day. After that cake. What kind of restaurant gives a 6-year-old a slice that size? You let him finish it. Well, it is his birthday. I suppose you're right. I'm glad he had fun. As the car comes to a stop, I let myself lie limp, pretending to be asleep. I feel myself being scooped up into my dad's arms, and I dare not to open my eyes to break the illusion. As I'm carried inside to my bed and tucked in, I feel a calm wash over me as something leans in and whispers, "Next time you return, there won't be a way back home." I woke to find myself in an unfamiliar bed and felt cold metal around my left wrist. I blinked as my eyes adjusted to the bright room and found myself in a small hospital room. I feel drowsy, hardly able to think. I try to rise from bed and find my back in pain. After a while, someone comes along and spots me awake, and eventually someone enters the room. But I can hardly make heads or tails of the conversation, mumbling at responses as they speak at me. She shut the blinds for me, and that helped a bit. She talked about care plans and something about my insurance, and asked about family. At some point she asked me if there was anyone the hospital could call to inform, and I couldn't think of anyone. I wanted to see my grandfather, so I asked if he could come and see me. She said that she would see what she could do, and I hoped that was enough. But he never came, and neither did anyone else. And at some point I remembered he was dead, and he had been for a long time. And as I looked around and realized that my fear had come true, and that I had indeed lost my mind, and was now sitting in a hospital bed like I was sick, I had to get out. I realized I would do anything not to be here, not to face what was happening. I would even go through the red door, even if I never got to come back. And as if on cue, like my thoughts had cast a silent prayer and summoned it themselves, I could see the red door just beyond the bed curtain. Slowly and cautiously I got up and heard the sound of a handcuff coming undone around my wrist. I stepped toward the door and it opened on its own, an orchestra of light flooding into the room. So if this is all real, and I really can step through, I'll update you on the other side, and if it's not well, then this is goodbye. Today was a good day. Mom got me up early for breakfast before she left for book club, and I spent all morning eating cereal and watching cartoons until I felt sick from sugar. It was a weekend marathon of my favorite shows, so I nearly ate a whole box. Around noon, I took my toys out to the backyard and played in the shade. I used the hose to make mud for my army men battle, but I'm pretty sure I couldn't find them all after. Mom got home and helped me wash up before making lunch. I had a sandwich and chips, and I even got a popsicle after finishing my food. I tell her she's the best mom in the world when she brings me the popsicle, and she laughs at me as if it's anything but true. She tells me she loves me, and I believe her, because I'd never had a reason to doubt it. I get to play on the GameCube with Dad when he gets home from work, so I already set up the controllers for us. Even though Mom says it's blocking the living room walkway, she still let me. When he walks through the door, I'm nearly jumping with excitement, and he settles in to play with me until dinner time. I smile up at him from my little chair, and he down at me. And even though we both struggle through the game, I enjoy every second of losing. I stepped away to sneak some Halloween candy while Dad was in the bathroom, even though we are having burgers in an hour. I can't wait to finish up our game, and Mom said if I eat all my dinner, she has a special dessert for me. I just hope the candy didn't mess up my appetite. I had a lot of fun today, and I'm excited for tomorrow. I love my mom and dad. I'm glad they love me too.